I wanted to share some ways that you can tell if there are unwanted spiritual influences around you and how to rid yourself of them. So, as I discuss quite a lot on this channel, and I will continue to until the day that I die, an electrodermal activity that is used in scientific applications, unbeknownst to the common public, aka your aura, is a reflection of the electromagnetic nature of the body. And since it is directly tied with your emotional state, you could also say that it is the measurable and physical representation of your spirit, your soul. If you have watched videos to no avail, listening to people talk about different herbs that you can put around your home, your apartment, your living space, salt, and it is not working. That's exactly why I'm discussing this. I'm making this video because of the fact that I have experienced this myself, and I experienced it twice recently, and so it's kind of fresh on my mind, and I can give you specific signs to be able to distinguish your own thoughts between unwanted spiritual influences. So the major one that you're going to notice is, regardless of any mental issue, like for example, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I've shown symptoms since I was 3. So uh when I start having obsessions and compulsions, that's not necessarily a sign. I don't necessarily take that as a sign. What you do want to take as a sign is if these obsessions and compulsions are repeatedly destructive in nature. They come out of nowhere. They usually come around the time you spend time with a specific person. This person will usually have relatives or loved ones who have passed around them, and you may or may not be aware of. This is the thing, I was lucky enough to be aware of these influences because I was told about them, but you may not ever be told because you don't get to know the person enough, as you shouldn't. If your intuition tells you not to, then you shouldn't ask those questions and pry. But if you are meant to know, it'll come to you. But I was lucky enough to know, but you may not always know because of circumstance. So these influences will latch onto you for different reasons. It could be from jealousy, from just boredom or inner unrest. Any of the reasons why a human would latch onto you. It's also applicable for spirits because we die with the same frequency and the same personality essentially that we have when we're here, and it does not change just because we die. We don't just automatically become enlightened when we die. That's one of the main signs, is you start to have repeated obsessive thoughts about, usually worst case scenario instances, about something that you very much care about. And it could be anything or anyone, but this is where self-awareness becomes very important, because only you are going to know what is unusual for you, and you need to reflect back on, what was I thinking about before I met this person, and how did I feel in my body and in my mind? What was I thinking about after I spent time with this person? There is a very extreme example which I'm not going to talk about because I've already made peace with that spirit and I very much respect her. So I would feel like I was betraying someone if I spoke openly about it. It was very destructive for a time for me personally, because it was just a shocking form, I guess, like thought form, to be in my space. But a more minor example would be, I spent time with someone who very much had a great deal of delusions around religion, a very anxious person. And I surmise that, and this was likely spiritual influences that are unbeknownst to me, probably non-human forms based on what I've been told from this person. After spending time with her, I had the worst night's sleep of my entire life. I was up all night sweating. I had body aches and I even had a headache that came out of nowhere. I felt like all the energy had completely drained from my body. I had not eaten anything unusual. I had not, you know, I was not actually sick. I woke up the next day and after maybe 1 hour of sleep, and eventually I was fine. But after I completely stopped spending time with her, I never felt that way again. So that's just one example. You have to really evaluate what is normal for you and what is not. For me, the obsessions, not so much the compulsions, but the obsessions get fixated on something that I hold very dear to me, and they won't necessarily reflect in other areas of my life. So that is the major way. Obviously, you can experience other strange things, losing things that you know for a fact you put in a specific spot, but then you all of a sudden can't find it. And then, a day or a few days later, you all of a sudden find it. Things like that. But that's a little bit less common. I actually find that stuff really funny. Have not experienced that in a while, but I actually do find it kind of funny. So it's not really a good way to like mess with me. But with darker forces, they do genuinely want to mess with you, and so this is how you can get rid of it. And this is why using stones and herbs and incantations and prayers is not necessarily effective. It's because when you are a human soul, you will do what you want regardless of the physical, the actual words that are said around you, the objects that are around you. You will do what you want regardless, right? So unless you have a good reason not to, if you want to do something, you will do it. Same thing with spirits. So you don't need any to buy anything. You don't need to open up a book. And in fact, I'm not Christian anymore, but when I was when I was Catholic, no offense if you're Catholic, but yeah, anyone who's come back from that knows what yeah. I did a hex breaking, and I did it in Jesus's name, and for over a month there were ants all over my apartment. So, that doesn't work. So yeah, I mean, maybe it works for you, but I'm not into that, and you can't make me. So, regardless, what you can do if you're experiencing unwanted spiritual influences and you want to get on a human level and rid yourself of that, I like to, and I know I said you don't have to do anything physical. That's true. But if you do have candles, specifically black candles, you can get them for cheap, but you don't have to, okay? That's not necessary, and it's not going to make it less effective if you don't. I'm just saying. The reason why is because fire is a life force, is the spiritual element. And so this is why many witches and many necromancers do use fire, because it is the conduit for the spirit to be able to interact there. And so, not necessary, but if you so desire, black candles, I recommend it. A mirror. You're going to sit down in front of a mirror or stand up, whatever is comfortable. I sat down, and you want the space to be very quiet. You don't want kids running around. You don't want people talking to you. You don't want the phone ringing. You want to make that space, make it very clear that it's just you and those spirits that you are communicating to. You want to have conviction. What I mean by this is if you don't genuinely believe that we have spirits in our bodies, and you believe that we're just here because we're sinners and we're terrible and filthy and disgusting, and when we die we just go to heaven or hell, this is not going to work for you, because you do not understand the eternal value of the spirit. You don't realize how life does continue after death, and it's not heaven or hell. Heaven or hell is And mind is all there is. Tibetan Book of the Dead, mind is all there is here in this life, but specifically after you die, mind is all there is. So, not to say there's not other dimensions. Yes, of course there are, but you can't access certain dimensions if as above, so below. It does not change after you die. So, if you don't actually believe that there are spiritual influences around you, and if you don't believe that, this is another thing, you could believe that in spiritual influences, but if you don't believe in the conviction and the power of your words and your emotions, your genuine emotions and your genuine words, this is not going to work, because spirits may or may not be able to read our minds, but they can absolutely read your energy. And just like when you are meeting someone for the first time, or if you're talking to your best friend and you can just tell somebody's lying to you, it's the same thing. They can tell when you are lying. So don't lie. You need to approach this conversation as a genuine soul, just like you would anyone in your waking life that you have a problem with. You would sit down with them and you would talk to them like an adult, but you would do it with your heart and you would do it with compassion. So, after you evaluate whether or not you believe in the conviction of your words and about your spirituality, now you are ready to prepare yourself emotionally. You want to be very stable when you do this. You don't want to be rampantly running around your house casting out demons with sage, okay? Because what does that do? You are spreading the energy of fear. You are putting your own energy of fear, disgust, and hatred out into the atmosphere. Why? You are not doing anything magical or supernatural by waving that sage around, talking about Jesus and God. You're not. You are spreading fear and perpetuating that same fear that you're trying to cast out. And if it's not fear, it's disgust, which is almost as bad, right? You don't want to do that. You want to be stable, okay? And you want to approach this conversation as though you are talking to a part of yourself, because if you believe in source consciousness at all, you need to try to have some empathy and not approach this as though it's disgusting and monstrous, okay? If you approach this conversation as though this force that you are dealing with, or forces if it's more than one, are monstrous and disgusting, then you're going to get even worse in your mind. Your life is going to get so much worse for you because you are just stirring the pot. You are upsetting energies that were already feeling threatened for whatever reason, or mischievous or whatever, and now you're just giving them a reason. So you genuinely need to have empathy and compassion with this conversation that you're going to have. It's going to appear like you are talking to yourself in the mirror, but you need to address these energies. You can address them by thinking of them. You can say their names if you know their names. If you don't know their names, then think of them, and that's likely enough. The power of telepathy is more monumental than you could ever imagine. It would shock you, genuinely. The power of you just thinking about an entity, if they are not on this earthly plane. Now, actually, let me start with that. If they are on this earthly plane, have you ever experienced just thinking of someone and then either the same day or the next day they call or text you out of nowhere? You didn't expect it. Maybe it was out after a long period of not talking to them. Yeah, it's because we're all connected on an energy cord. So thinking of anyone is actually very powerful. If you are a very concrete person and you want to address them, then address them, forces of the person that you feel like was associated with those forces, or forces who did X, Y, and Z. They know who they are. You know what I'm saying? Spirits of X, Y, and Z. Whatever it is for you, it's a very different situation for everybody. Even just thinking of them, they'll know who they are. Then, this is where the human element comes in. You're going to tell them that you understand. You understand their pain only to the extent that you're able to. You'll never truly get what it has been like for them personally. Okay? That shows that you've experienced similar types of pain, but you're also respecting their experience and telling them that you'll never fully understand, which is true. And if you tell anyone that, and if you genuinely mean it, they are going to open up to you to some extent. They have to, because they are being faced with pure empathy. Like, yeah, that's true. You don't know what I've been through. Like, thank you for acknowledging that. You're going to tell them that you are just a person and that you are not worth their time. You have to mean that. You have to really mean that. Because what you're saying is that you are draining your own energy and your own life force, messing with me. And I don't want that for you. I don't want that for me, sure, but I don't want that for you. So that's showing that you're not angry at them. You're not, even though you might be on some other level, depending on what's unfolded, you're not angry, you're not resentful, and you're not holding hatred or fear for them, but you're acknowledging that you as a vessel, your life, it's not worth their time. There's better things that they could be doing. Okay? And you need to approach this with patience too, because if you're just reciting these words like as I'm saying them and going so fast and just blow out the candle, walk away, you need to sit with that. You need to really sit with that for a minute to manipulate the energy in the atmosphere. Sandalwood and frankincense and myrrh are very helpful. If you're burning dragon's blood, that is going to deter any spirits at all, so you need to be careful with that. If you want to burn dragon's blood after the fact, then that's fine, but I wouldn't do it right after. I would do it maybe like the next day, because you're not having this conversation for no reason, obviously. You're not just trying to have a conversation with yourself, you're trying to actually address the problem. And that's why this works. I'm sure there's instances where it doesn't, but when you really, like, if you tell anyone on this earth that you are a waste of their time, it's kind of rare that you're gonna get somebody who's gonna keep bothering you. Usually if someone tells you that, you're just like, you kind of sit back in your chair like, oh, well, since you're saying it, then it must be true. And then you start thinking about all the ways in which it could be true. So, I think that that's really the best way to approach it. And all of these earthly things, like all the herbs and, putting cloves around your room, I guess, but you can absolutely still see these forces working like inside your mind and all this, if you don't have this conversation with compassion, with empathy, and setting them free essentially is what you really want to do, because you're not trying to help them cross over. If they haven't done it already, they're probably not ready, and that's not for you to decide. It's not the point. Movies have really bastardized that whole thing, going into the light. I get it, but 9 times out of 10, for curiosity, it's not even always out of pain. It's sometimes for curiosity. They just want to see what's going on, what's unfolding in this realm, because this is all we consciously know. We're not often comfortable with the idea of ascending interdimensionally, which is understandable. That's not for you to decide, and you shouldn't be fixated on getting other spirits to cross over. That's not your job. It's probably quite draining and time consuming, and how would you even know if they did? You wouldn't. Don't try to do that. All you're trying to do is restore the peace back into your life and restore peace back into your mind. And you'll know this worked if you receive either no signs at all, your mind calms down. That's pretty much the only sign. You're able to sleep at night. You're able to carry on with your relationships peacefully, maintain good emotional state, maintain good health with little to no effort like before. Or it can be a little bit more overt. When I say signs, I mean something that won't directly impact you physically, but it will be something that's a little bit miraculous. It could be very subtle, but something that cannot absolutely not be explained by anything scientific or physical. And it goes beyond noises, it goes beyond any of these things. But if she could not, I understood that she could not forgive me. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention. Oh my gosh. If you said anything negative about, okay, just let's say the spirits are deceased relatives or loved ones of someone you have talked very negatively about, which was the case in my situation both times. Yeah, my mouth kind of got me in trouble with that one. And so I had to apologize sincerely and tell them, look, I have said some terrible things about X, Y, and Z, and I am very sorry that I hurt them, and I will do what I can to make it right. That one's still pending, but I told them that I realized that I had made a mistake and that I was being immature, and that it just shows how flawed of a human being I am, and I'm still learning, you know, and if they really are uh, going to forgive you, they'll understand that. And if they don't forgive you, you may have to do this more than once, but you really need to emphasize your sincerity. Because if you are insincere at any point in this process, you will not get anywhere. And it'll be the same outcome as if you got a human being in front of you and you tried to apologize and you tried to go on this tangent and you didn't mean a single word of it and you were just fumbling and stumbling, and then they were looking at you like, okay, sweetie. It's gonna be kind of like that. So I hope that this gives you some clarity if you are experiencing some things within your mind or within your life that you are not really understanding, and you couldn't really find answers because everyone said sprinkle salt at every corner of your house and clean and put cloves everywhere. Those things can help, I guess, but it's for more stubborn influences. And if you piss somebody off, it's not really gonna do shit. Like, they're gonna look at those clothes and be like, oh, that's cute. So, yeah, stay aware of your mental state, evaluate your mental state at all times, evaluate your thoughts at all times, and if they ever get violent or obsessive or destructive, or you start to get angry at people in your life for no reason, question that. Don't take it at face value. And I hope you have a Merry December. This is my favorite month. My birthday's on the 29th. And if you're not spiritual, I don't I don't I don't know why you're still watching this. I mean, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but maybe one day you'll see. Maybe one day your TV in the basement will just fall over and crash after 8 years of being on the shelf out of nowhere, and then you're gonna sit there and you're gonna be like, yeah, that's not Satan, my friend. All the root word of Satan means is opposition. That's all it means. I hope you have a beautiful day or night, depending on where you are. Peace out.